First of all, we very much welcome Daphne Kane, MHK's intervention in bringing this issue back up to the surface again, which was raised in our petition a couple of years ago, and of course we're very disappointed with the Chief Minister's response. We feel this was a renewed opportunity to accept just 25 Syrian refugees to the island. We've seen that 2 years down the line this scheme is working in the UK. Lots of remote parts of and counties have taken on small groups of Syrian refugees, and with evaluations have shown it's been successful. And so we felt this was a second bite at the cherry, and we're disappointed that once again the Isle of Man has said no. This would have been a joint effort with the government and civil society. It wasn't something we were just asking the government to do. We were there with a whole lot of buddy schemes, transport, food, and so it would have been a joint effort, and we feel that these people who have been through hell for the last 7 years would have been taken from camps in the Middle East and given a warm Manx welcome, and so we're disappointed it's not, for now, going to happen.
Do you think this was the right time for it to be reconsidered?
Absolutely. I think although a decision was made a couple of years ago, I think it's very important that it is addressed periodically as the situation changes, both on the island, in Syria, and in terms of the resettlement programme in the UK. I think we need to be thinking on an ongoing basis about, first of all, are we making the most impact that we can possibly make with the resources that we have dedicated to this issue? And secondly, does our response continue to provide the most benefit that it possibly can for the people of the Isle of Man? Because there are a lot of benefits that the island and other communities that have taken part in the resettlement programme could receive from having Syrians on the island, both to our economy and socially as well. It would massively benefit us and our children being exposed to other cultures and languages, and also in terms of our reputation as an island. What kind of a role do we want to be seen to be playing on the world stage? And I think that these are really important considerations that we do need to continue to bring up on an ongoing basis. So it's we welcome Daphne's suggestion to reconsider the decision.
Okay, one thing the Council of Ministers has said is that it is going to continue to look for other ways to support refugees. Is it not more helpful to have that financial backing rather than bringing refugees here, actually putting finance in and giving that flexibility?
Well, at the time 2 years ago, the Isle of Man made a generous donation, almost £1 million, to the UNHCR for their work in the Middle Eastern refugee camps, Jordan, Turkey, Lebanon, and they've taken the brunt of it. And of course, that's fine as far as it goes, but it keeps them in the camps. And in a way, signing the cheque is almost an easy option. What we would like to do is provide a much longer term solution to them by bringing them here. It's not either or, it's both and. We realise we can't bring everybody in the camps here, but we were just asking for 25. And I think by bringing them here and giving them warm welcome with opportunities for employment and integrating with society, that's far better than a meaningless existence in a refugee camp in dire conditions.
I think also, if you're thinking in terms of the impact that this might have, the majority of the people in camps, they don't want to be there. They don't want to be in Europe or the UK. They want to be back in Syria, but they can't be because there's nowhere for them to go. And one of the biggest challenges going forward after the war is over is going to be rebuilding the country. And yet the people who are in camps now, they're missing out on the opportunity to earn money and to develop themselves professionally, and also to educate their children. So by giving people the chance to do that for a time, whether here or in the UK or wherever else in the world, we're contributing to that post-conflict development process as well by helping to rebuild a generation of people who will then contribute to the reconstruction of their country. So in the long term as well, it makes sense from an impact perspective to be investing in those people now rather than picking up later on when there's nobody qualified in Syria to rebuild the country.
Having spent time with Syrian refugees in northern France, actually, Excuse me. The Syrian refugees I've spent time with were professionals. They don't want to be living off charity. They want to be working. They want to be putting something back into the community. All of the people that I spoke with just wanted to get on with their lives. Yes, they'd love to go back to Syria, but Syria is not a place for them to go back to. So as Laura said, we need to invest in them for the future. And they will invest in us by contributing to our community.
There has been a lot of reaction online since Mrs. Kane's question was published. People have suggested that we have problems on the Isle of Man that need fixing, we have an overspend in the Department of Health, people rely on food banks. How can we justify financing refugees or bringing them here?
Well, yes, certainly those issues are alive and well, and we can't pretend there's no poverty on the Isle of Man. But I think one thing is the degree of scale. I'd like to believe that no child will go hungry in the Isle of Man tonight. I think poverty is very much a relative thing, and I think that even the poorest people on the Isle of Man are not living in camps and not depending on daily handouts and suffering that indignity and poverty that they are out there. So it's all a matter of relative. And I think as well, I remind myself earlier that there've been times in the past where the people in the Isle of Man have been suffering from depression and even emigration, where we have looked to other communities of the island to help us, to host us, not in recent centuries through civil strife, but nevertheless at times when the late 50s, early 60s, when mass tourism went into decline. Many people facing depression on the island and unemployment, they emigrated typically to beet fields in Lincolnshire, desperate for work, and they were taken and they were given jobs there. In earlier decades, the 19th century, the mines were exhausted. Our miners went off to the States or South Africa. We needed that help, and that was in times not when we were facing war or civil breakdown, but at times when we were simply economic migrants looking to be taken in. So, this can work both ways. Who knows what the Isle of Man will face in the future? And it's the basic argument is one of compassion, of can we offer a helping hand to people who are in desperate need, as well as looking at the benefits which Laura's outlined that would come to the Isle of Man.
I think it's important that we stop looking at the solution of resettlement as a bottomless pit of money and resources, and we actually need to start shifting our perspective towards thinking about it as an investment in our own economy, from which the poorest people on our island might benefit. So if we have people working on the island, putting money back into the economy, that is in turn going to benefit the people who are reliant on welfare on the island.
Yeah, and to follow up that because there's been a lot of publicity saying that we're worried that we're a hyper-aged society in terms of the UN definition, and we actually have to take steps, and the government is taking steps to attract younger people and families to come and work on the island, and that's to be applauded. And this resettlement scheme would surely dovetail very nicely with that initiative.
I think there's a lot of misunderstanding over the kinds of people who would be coming to the island. I think people forget that these people are immensely heavily vetted, and also the island would have a say in who comes. We could put forward, this is who we are able to cater for and this is what we need for our economy, and then we would be able to select people on that basis. I think people have a perception in their minds already of the kinds of people who would be coming as a drain on our society, and that's just not the case.
If you look at the Isle of Bute, which took 25 Syrian families, they have actually got a bakery, they're employing local people, so it's not just a case of they're coming, as Laura said, to take money from us. It's quite the opposite. They actually want to put money back into the economy and help.
Have you been surprised by some of the reaction, particularly on social media in the last few days?
I think a lot of the comments are a very vocal minority. One of the things that Manx Support Refugees is doing is we've just launched last night a collection For the women's refuge in northern France, there was a fire there 3 weeks ago, and all of the supplies were destroyed. What we like to do is turn a negative into a positive, and my experience from having done several collections on the Isle of Man, including 1,300 coats that we raised in 2 weeks in January for Coats for Calais, is that the Manx population actually want to help. It's just a minority that it's very easy to tap out on a computer than it is to actually speak to people. And actions speak louder than words. And from the Isle of Man, from what we have donated, the Manx people have donated, over all the campaigns that we've run, there's been a huge amount. So I think it's just a minority, really.